Hi everyone, welcome to the Thrive Tribe & Co Connect video, Sandy's Soapbox for today. We tried doing it in Facebook Live. It wasn't happening for us, so we're super excited to jump onto Zoom and get you a really clear recording. So my name's Sandy. I'm the founder of Thrive Tribe & Co, and today joining me is one of our beautiful members, Peta. And this whole call come about because, of that post. I can't even remember who posted it. Do you remember who posted it, Peta?
No, I'm not
I'm
sure.
so glad she did.
So many responses.
Yeah, I'm so glad she did because it's really important that everyone reaches out when they need support, and it opened up a can of worms, really. We didn't realize how many parents and carers were in the group dealing with their own health conditions and a child with special needs. And I think they're very intertwined. Like, I think stress and, and the issues we have around self-care often contribute to these conditions. So we'll get into that later. But Peta reached out. She wanted to talk about the power of food, and I was like, hell yeah, because that's my jam as well. And we thought we would share some tips. So today we're going to give you 7 tips you could implement straight away that could help you improve your overall health. So before we start, I'll get Peta to share a bit of her story, and then I'll share a bit of mine, and then we'll get into those 7 tips for you. So go for it, Peta.
Okay, so look, I guess when I saw that post, I saw the number of people that had mental health issues, and it, made me almost emotional that I thought, this is terrible. There are so many struggles out there. So I wanted to share my health journey. Now, as a child, I suffered from OCD very severely, really impacted on my life. My parents worked really hard on it and I got through it, but it continued to then repeat itself throughout my life. Whenever I had a stressful patch, it would come back. It got to when I fell pregnant with my first child, and I just turned into a crazy mess. Like, I was so anxious. I wouldn't tell anyone about it. It then was merging into depression. I was upset, unhappy all the time. Had my first child, couldn't enjoy him. Rarely spoke to my husband about how I felt. I internalized everything, and I felt like I was the only one in the world like that. And it was just awful. I now know that's not the case, and we need to speak out and talk about things. But at the time, I felt that way. So it got to the point one day I had a panic attack one night and didn't tell my husband, just lay next to him panicking. It was awful. Then had to wake up and get up and feed my son. And I just felt terrible. And the next morning, I called my mum. She came over and just took me under her wing, took me to the doctors. I ended up being put on antidepressants, which I was able to come off. But and I started seeing a psychologist. That worked for a little while. Like, it was great. It sort of made me feel a little better. But then it all crept back in again. So I thought, this is not my life. I can't live like this. It's not a happy existence. So did my own research, started listening to health talks, and then one particular talk just really resonated with me one day. It was on gluten, I think, and it was. And the next day, I actually came off. I quit gluten. I thought, hang on, it seems too good to be true. This is ridiculous, but if this is true, it's worth a try. So I quit gluten, and I reckon 3 to 5 days later, the fog lifted. I could reason. I started to feel semi-happy. It was just amazing. So from there, I thought, okay, I'm going to continue this. And then I also started to see a naturopath, my amazing naturopath who saved my life. And over the years, that was about 3 years ago, I have just continued to get better. And I've, evolve my diet along the way, change things up depending on what I'm looking at in my life at the time. And I'm now at the point where I would say I'm anxiety free. I'm so happy. I've had my second child, my daughter, and I did that anxiety free. And it got to the 1 year mark when she turned 1. I was just so emotional because I thought, I'm so happy.
Yeah.
It's amazing. You can be happy again.
Absolutely. I love that. So I started my health and I suppose food journey. Let's get that out. It'll be about 6 years ago, even a little bit longer than that now. So I didn't have the mental health side, I had very physical reaction. So I was hospitalized for 3 days. They didn't know what had happened to me, and that was a real wake-up call. They thought I had a stroke. I was 29 years old. I didn't have any of the risk factors, but basically they sent me home saying, we don't know what happened to you. We hope you get better. And when you get news like that, it's like the universe giving you a big kick up the behind. That's how I feel like it was. And that started me on this journey of trying to learn more, because what I had learned in my Bachelor of Health Science through uni was not helping me. So I needed to try some different things. And I think what we want to get through to you guys today is that there are lots of different eating plans out there. There's lots of different diets. There's lots of different styles, but you need to be your own personal health detective and find out what works for you. But they do have similarities, and we're going to go through that today. So, I found something that worked for me, and over the past 6 years, I've literally tried, I would say, I don't know, dozens of ways of eating, just because I love to experiment and see what works for my body. And what I've found works for me is a balance. I like lots of veggies. Sometimes I'll be veggie for periods of time, but then I will enjoy a steak every now and again, So I just think you've got to listen to what your body needs, and what it needs at certain times is different to others, but there are some similarities, and we're going to go through that today. So let's get into it. So the first one we want to talk about is this evil white substance called sugar. So we're going to go through that one first, and Peta's going to give her little her thoughts on it, and then I will add if I need to, but I think we're pretty much on the same page with this one. So why don't you talk about, so tip number 1 is reducing sugar. So talk a little bit about that, Peta.
Yeah, so we want to basically really try and cut out all refined sugar. And I mean, we can have some natural sugars, but basically limit our sugar. It's inflammatory. It spikes blood sugar and insulin, and it feeds our pathogenic gut bugs. Now, I won't go too much into that today, but basically, if you have an overgrowth of the negative gut bugs and the candida, you get health issues. You also crave more sugary, starchy foods, which then promote weight gain. So It opens a whole can of worms.
And we don't need it. Like, it's not something that is needed. Any additional sugars in our diet aren't needed. There are natural sugars in vegetables. Like, you'll know that pumpkin and carrot are sweeter than, say, an onion. So there's different levels of natural sugars called fructose in those, and especially in fruits, right? But when you get sugar in fruit, it's also combined with fiber, and fiber helps slow the blood sugar spike. So that's how you want to be getting sugar, from natural sources combined with fiber, so it's not giving you these really unhealthy spikes. So I always say to my the people that I coach that if you are craving sweet, try a piece of fruit first, or try some berries, because you're going to get that natural sugar hit, but with the fiber, so you're not getting the spike.
I've got to say as well, a lot of people will say to me, oh, I couldn't give up sugar. I couldn't give up chocolate. I was an absolute chocoholic. I would sit down and watch a movie and have a packet of Allen's lollies, a whole packet to myself, and then wonder why I felt terrible for 3 days after.
Yeah.
So if I can do it, anyone can do it. Absolutely. You do go through a few withdrawals, it's difficult, but once you get to the 2-week mark, you're done.
It might even be worth mentioning to people to cut down. Like, if you think you can't cut it out right now, what if you just reduced it? And then it was like when I taught myself to have tea with no sugar, I was like, all right, I'll go from 1 to a half. And I was like, at the end, I was like, why am I bothering with the half? Just cut it out, Yeah.
And you taste evolve.
Yeah. And I, now if I have too much sugar, I get a headache. Like, if it's a hot day and I, for whatever reason, decide to get a Slurpee, I know I'm going to deal with a headache, because they're just like cups of sugar, right? So, if you know the risks, and once your body's used to it, it does have those reactions. All right. So number 1, reduce sugar. Number 2, cut processed food. So tell us about processed food.
Yeah. So within processed food, there are so many ingredients that just don't sit well with our body. Our bodies don't recognize them. There are chemicals, there are allergens, and basically we should be eating a whole food diet where we prepare our food from scratch. And I know that's not always possible, but if we can't, read your labels. And so often I'll read through labels and I'll just think, just for a bit of fun, I'll pick something up in the health food aisle, or the health food aisle, and I'll have a read and I think, oh my goodness. So there are fake sugars, high fructose corn syrup, other disguised names for sugar, just a whole lot of chemicals and preservatives that really flare up a lot of sensitive people.
It's so true. And look, I recently cut out the 7 most reactive foods, which are soy, corn, gluten, dairy, eggs, sugar, and there's one more, peanuts. And it was like a 21-day elimination. And I was fine at home. Like, it's all good because I could cook my own stuff. But when you go out, soy, corn, and gluten are in everything. And the reason for that is most of it's genetically modified and it's so cheap for them to make. They put it in everything, right? So genetically modified foods are not meant for our body, and they cause all sorts of havoc, which leads to our next point. So number 2 is cut processed food. Number 3 is reducing or eliminating gluten. And look, there's different ways that you can, different schools of thought on this. I'll let Peter go first and then I'll explain our experience with it. But gluten in the form that it is in most things should not be going into our bodies, I believe.
Yeah, so I touched on gluten before when I mentioned my health journey. And basically when I decided to make that decision to quit gluten, when I make a decision often I really take it pretty far. So I just quit it cold turkey, and 3 days later, the fog lifted. I just started to feel happier again. I could reason. I felt like I was becoming a rational person. Then I started to be able to enjoy my family, my son again. And so for me, it was a no-brainer. Thought, I don't need this stuff. Gluten is a neurotoxin, so hence why it was really affecting my brain. It's inflammatory and it causes leaky gut, which I won't go into. But basically, if you're a gluten-sensitive person, you don't have to be celiac, but gluten-sensitive. You can react with autoimmune conditions, allergies, a whole host of unpleasant conditions.
Yeah, totally. So, I read this really great book called Wheat Belly. I don't know if you've read it. Yeah. And because food, I just love learning about it. I think there's so much we can learn about food. And, it really opened my eyes to the different types of science and stuff that has affected our food. And like across the globe, it's causing so many different issues. But what we've found was, we removed gluten from Emmy's diet when she was first diagnosed with autism, and we noticed results within 2 or 3 days. It was like a fog had lifted from her eyes, and it was like she was seeing the world for the first time. I remember her watching birds fly overhead. She was 2.5, and it was like she'd never seen a bird before in her life. Sorry, our blender's going on in the background. It's just it'll be off in a second. I don't know if you can hear it on there. And what I've found though now is that it's certain things that flare her up. So she can have like a non-GMO, so non-genetically modified bread that has gluten in it, because the gluten looks different, like when you look at the cells, right, than what it does to the genetically modified one. If you looked at those under the microscope, they'd look completely different. They've completely changed wheat from what it used to look like something else. So we've found that certain types are okay. So for Emmy, she can eat that non-GMO bread. She can't have regular bread. It makes her a crazy sugar-obsessed person. Like, it flicks the switch in her brain. For me, I can't do normal bread or pasta, like world of pain, but I can do sourdough, and that's okay with my tummy. So again, I think it's about finding what works for you and your family, and being able to, I think if you can minimize gluten as much as you can, we really don't need a whole heap of it. I think you're on, a positive track there if you can minimize.
And I think it's important to note as well that a lot of the time a gluten low diet or gluten-free diet has a bad name because of the fact that people reach for the other highly processed gluten-free products, which are actually also inflammatory. So it goes back to, again, a whole food diet.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so which brings us to the next point, which is whole food snacks. So why shouldn't we be eating from packets?
Okay, so I guess as we were saying before, packeted food, processed food contains so many disguised toxins and sugar, all that sort of thing. and chemicals, which are just not good for us. They're unrecognizable by the body. They cause allergies, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So basically, we want to eat a whole food diet that we know what goes into all of our food. Either we make it ourselves, or we pick up an apple,
Yeah.
or we pick up an avocado. I boil eggs for my kids. Everything in their lunchbox I really try and make from scratch. And also, what else have we got? Like celery, carrots, nut butter. You might want to make home make some muffins, or I do like a really good savoury muffin. I'll have to send you a recipe for this.
Yes, please.
Really exciting. It's not my recipe, it's someone else's.
That's all right. They're the best ones. And I can't stick to a recipe, and I always tweak it somehow.
Yeah, that's right. So they're the sort of foods we want to be having, so we know what goes into our food.
Absolutely. I'm a massive believer in that. Like this morning I've been up, like I get up really early. It's just how my body clock works, and thank God because Emmy's does as well. But, I made some nut and seed crackers this morning instead of buying like packeted Vita-Wheat biscuits. They're super simple. I've got all the ingredients in the cupboard, and because Steph's coming over today, we're doing a bit of a planning day. I've also made like a pumpkin, I want to call it like a pumpkin hummus dip, and it tastes amazing. And I had all the ingredients, because once you start cooking that way, you'll find just have the stuff in the cupboard. I didn't have to go shopping for it. It tastes so much better, and there's no nasty preservatives or emulsifiers or stuff like that in there. And
sounds like the New Year's Eve dinner I made for my family. I made us crackers from scratch, had avocado, a few cheeses, some strawberries, and a dip that I'd made from scratch as well, and they loved it.
Yeah. And once you start thinking like that, it's actually quite easy. And you can freeze lots of stuff too. Like you don't have to be cooking all the time. So I think that's another call. But switching your mindset around what a lunchbox should look like, or what your snack at home when you're having a cup of tea could look like, it can be really simple and really important. All right. So number 4 is have more whole food snacks, if you're writing these down. Okay. Number 5. We're looking at healthy swaps, I had written down.
Yeah, so I do a lot of healthy swaps for my kids. So basically, we're gluten-free, obviously. So instead of pasta, I might spiralize a carrot or a zucchini, and they'll have their bolognese sauce over some vegetables. So it's more nutrient dense than the gluten or the pasta. And they really enjoy it. We might do, instead of a risotto with rice, which rice is not so bad, but it depends if you choose to cut out grains. I'll actually do a cauliflower rice for myself. I really enjoy. I try and give my kids treats that they're going to really enjoy, to make them feel like they're like everyone else, So those fat ball muffins that I mentioned, they end up being like a scone.
Yeah.
And I'll put, instead of
I'm really excited to try them, by the way.
Oh, it's amazing. I live for them. Basically, instead of jam and cream, I'll mash up a banana on one side, and I make my own cashew cream.
Yeah.
And I put that in there, and they'll eat them. They love them. And it's whole food. I know every ingredient that's gone into it.
Yeah.
And they love it.
Yeah. Totally. I'm just trying to think of some of the healthy swaps that we do. Like I swap Chobani yogurt for sour cream. So when we have nachos, my nachos is actually super healthy. So I'll use Chobani yogurt for sour cream. I'll put that in the guacamole, and I often use mountain bread rice wraps and cut them into triangles and toast them in the oven. So instead of having corn chips, we've got something that's a little bit more, gut friendly and a little bit healthier. So there's lots of things you can do with swaps. And
we make ice cream as well. I'll do like a banana ice cream with a bit of homemade yogurt in there, and I'll put a bit of cacao. And they think it's amazing. They've got chocolate ice cream.
Yeah.
All healthy.
Yesterday we made sweet potato brownies. And the kids loved them. And it was so funny because Cooper wanted to cook a chocolate cake. So we went from all these healthy ingredients like coconut flour, coconut oil, sweet potato, cacao, honey. It was the sweetener. And then I had to literally put all of that away and all the crap come out of the cupboard to make the chocolate cake. And we literally only have a few pieces of the brownie left, and the chocolate cake's still sitting whole on the counter. But if you can find recipes like that, and literally Google, like, it's not that hard. There's so many now resources out there. So, all right. So number 5 was healthy swaps. Number 6, cutting vegetable oils. This one might be one that people don't know much about, because vegetable oils are really cheap, right? And heaps of people will cook with them. Why don't you fill us in a little bit?
Yeah, so from what I've seen, this is quite a foreign topic to a lot of people. Vegetable oils undergo a process called hydrogenation, which uses harsh chemicals, solvents, things that are not food and are actually toxic to our bodies. So there were remnants of that in these products, and the process actually creates a product in the end that is not recognizable by our bodies. So it creates inflammation in our bodies and disrupts our biological processes. I won't go any further into that, but it causes so many problems.
And the thing is, there's other options. Like, you don't have to choose vegetable oil, right?
So we want to use more natural oils. So coconut oil I use for frying, lard, ghee. And I mean, I know it's a bit of a controversial subject because this is new to probably a lot of people, but those natural animal fats are actually really good for cooking and frying with. Butter even. Now, if you're going to make a salad, you might want to use an olive oil. So all of those oils are natural fats. They're oils that you can squeeze out of whatever whole food it was without using harsh processes and harsh chemicals, which are bad for our bodies.
Absolutely. So we switched to from rice bran oil to macadamia oil after I did some listening to a health podcast. Yeah. And because macadamia oil has a higher smoke point, as does avocado oil, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's different oils out there you can use. And I wanted it in a spray, but I didn't want to have like what are they called? Like an aerosol can. So now, like at Woolies, they've got these sprayers. So I literally get my macadamia oil, I put it in my sprayer, so I know I'm getting the best oil to cook with. And olive oil I only use really for cold. Like, you're not actually supposed to cook with olive oil. It doesn't have that property. Once you heat it, it changes the structure of it, right? Yeah. So maybe make a switch with your oil. So get rid of any vegetable oils that are in the cupboard. They are not doing you any service, and they're often in your processed foods too, which is why you shouldn't be having those. But
so people know, just so people know, things like canola, sunflower, as you'd said, rice bran oil, they are all those nasty oils.
Yeah. All right, so the last one is about getting out into nature, and I love this one because it's not actually food, but really it's all linked together, right?
Yeah, completely. You want to get out into nature. Actually, after this, I'm about to take my 2 kids to the beach. So we'll get some lovely sun. They're going to play in the sand. We get into the salt water, which I'm currently working on healing my eczema now, and as is my son, I'm helping him with that. So the salt water is the best thing for us. We're getting good gut bugs from playing in the sand and from the salt. We derive our vitamin D from the sun. Of course, we're careful. You know, I still put long sleeve rash shirts on them, and we try and find a little space in the shade to sit down when we're not splashing about in the water. We bring our little picnic lunch of whole food, and it's just such a soul cleansing day. And so many benefits from getting out in nature.
Absolutely. And you know what? I don't live near the beach. It's on the plan. Like, we have a sea change plan. But, you know, even when I'm feeling a bit stressed, getting in the backyard with no shoes on and walking on the grass. Like, it doesn't need to be, that you do these big trips. It can just be as simple as just fresh air, sunshine, feet in the grass or on the dirt. Like, I just think there's so much to be said for that, and so much it can do not only physically but also emotionally as well. So there are our top 7 tips: reducing sugar, cutting processed foods, eliminating or minimizing gluten, whole food snacking, those healthy swaps, cutting vegetable oils, and getting your little bit of nature. And I can see all my washing in the background, and everyone's going to see it in the recording, but that's mum life, and that's just what happens, isn't it, Peter? If I'm hoping there's someone in the ground behind you, I can't see them. She's got a camera up higher than
Yeah. Over there on the other side. Don't worry.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us for this version of Sandy's Soapbox that didn't go so well on Facebook Live, but we hope you got heaps of value out of the recording. Thank you, Peter, for all your knowledge and expertise today. It was wonderful.
Thank you, Sandy. I'm so happy to share with everyone, and hopefully it might resonate with a few of you, and you might make a few of these changes.
Awesome. Beautiful. Thanks, Peter.
Thanks. Bye.